The house on the cliff. I grew up in a small seaside town where everyone knew each other. Our town was quiet and cozy, but it had one peculiar feature: a tall cliff overlooking the raging sea. At its very edge stood an old, abandoned house. No one had lived there for decades, and locals called it the Cursed House. There were countless rumors about the house. Some said a man who once lived there had mysteriously disappeared. Others claimed that anyone who entered the house was never seen again. But I was always curious about what truly lay behind its crooked walls. One day, I was walking home after school. The wind whipped dark clouds across the sea, and I decided to take a shortcut along the path leading to the cliff. As I passed the house, I thought I saw a light flickering in one of its windows. Probably just my imagination, I told myself, but a strange feeling lingered. I stopped and stared at the window. There was definitely movement inside. I felt a shiver run down my spine, but my curiosity outweighed my fear. I stepped closer. Inside, the house was dark, but I could see a faint, shadowy figure moving near the window. "Hey!" I called out. There was no response. The next day, I couldn't shake the thought of what I'd seen. I told my best friend, Mark, about it. He was just as curious as I was, and immediately suggested we go there together. "Maybe someone's squatting there," he said. "Let's check it out." We agreed to meet that evening, armed with flashlights and pocket knives, just in case. We made our way to the house. As we approached, I felt a chill emanating from its crumbling walls. The door was slightly ajar, as if inviting us in. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Mark asked, noticing my hesitation. "Of course," I replied, masking my fear. Inside, the house was even gloomier than it looked from outside. The floorboards creaked beneath our feet, and the air was damp and heavy. The walls were covered in mold, but old portraits still hung on them. One of them depicted a man in a long coat with a stern expression. "That must be the guy who used to live here," Mark muttered. We ventured further into the house. In the back, we found a staircase leading to the basement. From below, you could hear a faint sound, almost like whispering. "Do you hear that?" Mark asked. I nodded. The sound grew louder, resembling a voice repeating the same phrase. "Help me." We descended into the basement. There, in the center of the room, stood an old, dusty chest. The whispers seemed to be coming from inside it. "Do we open it?" Mark asked quietly. I nodded. When we opened the chest, we found an old journal inside. The whispers stopped the moment we touched it. The cover bore a name, Richard Carter. We began to read. The journal described how Richard had lived in the house many years ago. He wrote about a curse that had fallen upon the house, mentioning voices that called to him from the cliff. The final entry was haunting. "If you found this, please don't let the house claim another life. Burn this journal and the curse will be lifted." A cold chill ran down my spine as I read the words. We hurried out of the house, taking the journal with us. Outside, the wind picked up, howling fiercely, as if the house didn't want us to leave. The walls groaned ominously, and the front door slammed shut behind us, as though trying to trap us inside. We ran to the edge of the cliff and built a small fire. As I lit the pages of the journal, I felt a heavy weight lift from the air. The wind suddenly calmed, and in the distance we heard a faint whisper, but this time it sounded grateful. "Thank you." The next day, the house looked different. Its walls no longer loomed menacingly, and the windows were empty of any flickering shadows. Locals said the place felt calmer now. Mark and I decided never to go back. Still, sometimes I pass by the house and feel as though someone is watching from the window, not with malice, but with warmth, as if thanking us for breaking the curse that had haunted it for so long.